like when it comes to a lot of WWE shows, Night of Champions is one I think a lot of people tend to kind of gloss over. And it's kind of interesting because during the time, it actually used to be really special to see because like we used to see all these like championships defended in one night. And it was really cool to see because of just the fact that, this was something that just was kind of like interesting that it was dedicated to the whole entire show. Seeing all the championships defended really made the show stand out on its own. And this is actually one of the more like newer pay-per-views that they've come out with. Yeah, sure, it's almost 20 years old in retrospect, but it actually was going pretty strong for a good solid years. And then it just kind of seemed like WWE abandoned it for somewhat time. And then they were able to bring it back in 2023. And it almost felt like it was kind of a big deal for some of us fans that really grew up watching these type of shows because it was almost like it was a return to form. But today I actually wanted to go back to the first Night of Champions. And I wanted to just kind of talk about the show and just kind of see how it held up. If you guys are new to the channel, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I really appreciate it. Your guys' support really helps these videos keep coming out. And I really do like making these type of videos. So the show starts off with a video package basically describing what the entire show is going to be about and like what exactly the Night of Champions are all about and who the big major title defenses were going to be with. And then we also get this big pyro explosion. So the first match was kind of a little bit more of a lackluster type of match to start off the show, I'm not going to lie. It was Hornswoggle and Finlay versus Miz and John Morrison. The original Miz and Kit Wilson, if you want to look at it. But this was actually kind of an interesting match because, it's almost seemed like it was more of like a handicap match, a 1-on-2 type of match, just seeing how it was Finlay and Hornswoggle going against Miz and John Morrison. And John Morrison was really, I felt like he was more so one of the more underappreciated guys in the show because of this time in WWE, just because of the simple fact that he seemed like he had such charisma and such of a character, and his like in-ring ability, like he was able to really tell a good story. And same with The Miz in some way, and there's a reason why The Miz is still going strong to this day, even because of just the fact that he understood the craft of WWE, and he really did understand it. And obviously, Finlay and Hornswoggle aren't around anymore. John Morrison and The Miz won the match, and they were able to retain the tag team championships. And Chavo Guerrero versus Matt Hardy. Matt Hardy, and in my opinion, Matt Hardy is one of the more underappreciated wrestlers. I feel like he kind of gets overshadowed by Jeff because Jeff was more extreme, obviously. But Matt was still pretty cool to see. And this match was for the United States Championship. And, of course, it had its moments. It had its neat spots. But honestly, guys, I feel like the ending of this match was actually really cool to see. Because you see Chavo Guerrero is going for 3 Amigos. And then he's going for the final 3 Amigo. And then Matt Hardy was able to reverse it and turn it into a twist of fate. And he was able to retain the United States Championship. So not really much to say about this match, but it was pretty neat to see just how they were able to tell an interesting story. At a combined weight of 1,156 pounds between 3 of these guys, it was Mark Henry versus Kane versus Big Show. Now, this match literally was the Clash of Titans. You saw 3 big guys all going at it, and this literally was pretty cool to see. Literally, all these guys were still pretty strong in the WWE, I feel like. And this was actually for the ECW championship. So during this time, WWE was kind of crossing over with ECW still. And they were doing that from, I think, until 2009, if I remember correctly. So this was something really cool to see, just like how it was for a different championship. And at the time, Kane was the champion, and it was a triple threat match for it. So we saw 3 of these guys come out, and speaking of Kane, man, I just gotta say, I missed Slow Chemical. Like, that theme was literally his theme. Anytime Kane came out to that theme, you already knew that that was his theme. And, of course, like, all 3 of them squared off with each other in the ring, There were points where Kane was getting taken out. There was actually one point where Kane and Big Show actually worked together, and they were actually being like how they used to be, because apparently they used to be a tag team before this. I knew they were a tag team, but I couldn't remember if it was before this match or after. And then, then once they took Mark Henry out, then Kane and Big Show were kind of going after each other for a minute. And there was one moment where Big Show chokeslammed Kane, and then Kane sat up like Undertaker used to, and then just looked at him like, you ain't going to get rid of me that easily. And then Kane tries to go for a chokeslam on Big Show, and then he gets taken out for a second. And then Mark Henry comes out of nowhere and does this big splash on Kane, and then he won the ECW championship. So it was really neat to see how they handled this match. Really kind of unique to see how it was just three guys, all really big, just going at it, all matched up pretty well. And I ain't gonna lie, I thought Big Show was gonna win this originally. So then we get to the next match. It's Cody Rhodes and Hardcore Holly versus Ted DiBiase Jr., which was kind of interesting because, this was actually Ted DiBiase Jr.'s debut match in the WWE, and we didn't really know like what to really expect. It was going to be a tag match for the World Tag Team Champions, and we didn't really know who his partner was because they didn't reveal it. And then Ted DiBiase just takes the microphone and says, "We can start the match, but I want to have my partner. He'll be here soon, but I want to go against Hardcore Holly." And so this kind of was a little interesting to see because nobody knew what was going on. And then as Hardcore Holly gets in the ring, Cody Rhodes attacks Hardcore Holly, and then they won the World Tag Team Championships. And this is what led to the formation of Legacy, guys. And literally, it's kind of unique to see how this all started because Ted DiBiase just came into the WWE. He was in a tag match, and then that's when him and Cody decided to just become the form Legacy. And obviously, he sure made a legacy, all right, because, he's not really doing so good now. It's funny how Cody's doing good in terms of being the champion and everything right now, currently in WWE, while Ted DiBiase, yeah, he's not really doing such a good job right now. So obviously, yeah, but during the time, this was such a unique swerve because it was just like, whoa, like this is how this guy starts his WWE debut. He takes Cody Rhodes, and then they basically form a faction later with Randy Orton to form Legacy. So then we got to this next match, and it was actually Chris Jericho coming out with the Intercontinental Championship. And this match was actually going to be a surprise match because Chris Jericho didn't even know who he was going to be wrestling. And it's kind of funny because of just the simple fact that Jericho was coming out. He was cutting a promo like, you guys don't deserve to see my championship match, and nobody deserves to see me because I sacrificed for you guys anniversaries and you guys don't appreciate me and all that kind of stuff. Jericho was actually really funny as the heel, and he was really cutting it a good promo, I feel like, because Jericho really did do a good job in terms of just being a bad guy. I feel like Jericho is one of those guys where it's like he doesn't get really enough talk in terms of like how he was a heel and everything. And he was like going on saying like how Shawn Michaels is getting his eye was injured or something, and like how he couldn't fly out from Texas to be here to wrestle, and because everybody wanted to see Shawn versus Jericho. And it would have been kind of neat to see because, we've already seen those two go at it at WrestleMania 19 going at each other. So just seeing these two have one more match would have been really cool to see on this night. But, it is what it is. So instead we had our surprise match being Kofi Kingston versus Chris Jericho instead. And Kofi Kingston, this was his first WWE Championship match. And watching this match, Jericho was really laying it to Kofi for the most part because of just the simple fact that Kofi was more he was he was still kind of new to the whole entire WWE. Like this was like he was still pretty new and fresh in the company. So like he wasn't really as experienced as he is later, of course. but Jericho was really defeating Kofi for a good minute until they were about to go on this top rope, and Kofi was able to reverse it, and then he was able to start getting some more offense on Jericho. Jericho was about to wrap up the match because he starts putting Kofi in the walls of Jericho, and then out of the crowd comes Shawn Michaels. He comes, eye injured and everything. Hopefully he can see better now. Just kidding. But then he sweet chin music's Lance Cade, and then he gets on the apron and he's about to cost Jericho the match, and then that's what actually led Kofi to win. Kofi was able to hit Jericho with the Trouble in Paradise, and then that's the match. And then Kofi won the Intercontinental Championship this night. So it was really cool to see how we were able to see Kofi Kingston, who is brand new on the roster, able to come in and become a champion. And really, this really was unique to see as well, because just seeing new championship faces like this was really a nice change of pace. So Jericho was, of course, beside. He takes out his frustration on Shawn Michaels. And yeah, that's just kind of how that all ended up. So then we got to the next match, and it was Mickie James versus Katie Lee. I'm not going to lie, guys, I kind of didn't really watch this match in full. I did see, though, however, that Mickie James did win the Women's Championship, so that was really neat to see. But again, I didn't really watch this one in full as much. Batista versus Edge. Now, the matchup between these two was really simple. It was kind of an interesting story with how this happened, because the whole idea was simple. Edge beat Undertaker at TLC, and Batista said that whoever was going to win between those two, he was challenging for the World Heavyweight Championship. And he was claiming his spot to be the guy to go after Edge. Well, Vicky was still the GM at this time, and she was the one who was with Edge on screen. So she wanted to say that she was going to make it hard for Batista. And of course, Batista, he was getting thrown like everybody who was in Edge's type of little faction. And he was trying to get taken down basically by everybody, but Edge kept coming back, and he was going to be the guy to take down Edge. Batista was not playing around, and Batista was an absolute unit during this time. Edge was a really great heel as well, of course, because Edge, for me, during like '08, like this was like him at his pinnacle of like being the ultimate heel, I feel like, the ultimate opportunist, as he called himself. But seeing Batista and Edge, these two guys who were really just like these really big names, like they were great. They were really cool from like '02, '03, and '04. But then, of course, '05 and '06 is when they really were like in their prime. And '08 is kind of like them at the end of their prime. So there's kind of this whole thing that was happening as well, because during the time the WWE draft was happening, where certain people were going to Raw or SmackDown. And see, Batista challenged Edge on SmackDown, and during this whole entire storyline, they were competing with each other on SmackDown, but then Edge was still the World Heavyweight Champion while on SmackDown, and Batista got drafted to Raw. So if he didn't beat Edge for the World Heavyweight Championship, then he was never going to be able to challenge Edge again, and he wasn't going to be able to bring the championship over to Raw. So it was one of those things where it was like, is he going to be able to bring the championship to Raw, or is Edge going to keep it on SmackDown? The match starts and Edge comes out first, and he's the World Heavyweight Champion. And, obviously he's the heel in this match, so everybody wants him to lose. And of course, Edge, he's some kind of slick move up his sleeve, and it's not sure what it's going to be yet, of course, but of course he's going to do something to screw Batista out of winning the championship. And then Batista comes out, and this guy just looks like an absolute unit. Batista always would come out, just get the crowd super hyped. His pyro entrance and just everything about this entrance would always get me in the mood to like really like be engaged with whatever he was going to do, or like whatever his match was going to be, or even if he was just coming out to cut a promo. Batista was just that guy, man. So the match starts, and it's going pretty typical at first. Edge and Batista are trading blows back and forth, and there's even moments where, Edge was knocking Batista down and was basically dominating Batista for a good chunk of the match. But for Batista, this wasn't just a match where he had to come in and just have to win. He had to win this match because he was going to become the World Heavyweight Championship so he can take it back to Raw. Of course, Edge is knocked down. He's out of the ring and he's trying to get up, and the referee's counting. And then Edge pulls the referee out and knocks the referee out. And this would have been a disqualification by any means. But of course, since Edge is the ultimate opportunist, he knocks out the referee. And then since Vicky Guerrero is the GM of SmackDown, she calls for a new referee to come out, and it turned out to be Chavo. And this man was going to really try to come and save Edge at the end of the day. He was going to come and try to make sure Edge kept the championship. This is how desperate they were to keep Edge the champion because he was that big of a heel. So, of course, Batista wasn't having that. He takes Vicky Guerrero and he picks her up over his shoulders, throws her over the top rope, and they knock out everybody, including Chavo Guerrero. Edge is still out, but then he gets back in the ring. He takes the championship, hits Batista, knocks him out, and then that's the end of the match. Batista was done, and Edge retained the championship. I ain't gonna lie, I really was hoping Batista was gonna win this match because I really do think Batista with the World Heavyweight Championship, it's like a whole different beast. He's a whole different animal, and he just really makes the championship feel like it's prestigious in some way. But, of course, Edge had to do some kind of dirty trick to keep that championship around him. And the story was simple between this two. It was John Cena versus Triple H. And it's actually kind of interesting because this was a rematch to what they were having back at WrestleMania 22, where they were competing then, and John Cena made Triple H tap out to the STFU. So it's almost like as if like this was a redemption arc for Triple H. Of course, Triple H had to try to avenge his loss to Cena 2 years prior to this match. So of course, like he wanted to try to prove that he could become the champion and stay the champion still to Cena. So the match started off, and of course, it's kind of the same premise as to like what it was with the whole Edge and Batista match. It was just kind of like seeing like, okay, if Cena wins, then he's going to be able to bring the WWE Championship to Raw, and then Triple H is on SmackDown, and if he won, then he would just keep the championship on SmackDown. So it was pretty simple, and actually this match was really interesting to see because like literally these two were just going at it at first for a minute. Of course, this was during the peak of Super Cena, so Super Cena was able to pretty much overcome all the odds and try to pull up all the stops and try to do anything he could to win the match. But this also was Triple H that we're talking about, and you know how Triple H is. He's gonna beat the game! But anyway, so it's really cool to see what was happening in the story. There were even points on commentary where they were mentioning the previous WrestleMania bout that these two had, and this was the first time in 2 years that these two were going at it. And honestly, guys, like just seeing that the feel that these two brought into the main event of this pay-per-view, it really just makes it feel like it was a big fight feel, like it really was like two of the big names going at it. And actually, it's really cool to see too because literally these two were even the last two men of the Royal Rumble of '08, and they were also in the WrestleMania Triple Threat match that year as well. So literally these two were having a pretty competitive 2008 with each other, just kind of going back and forth with each other in some way. And tonight, here we were to prove who was going to be the champion. There's even a point where John Cena put Triple H in the STFU, and he was going to try to make Triple H tap just like how he did at WrestleMania 22. And they even had the same ref, Mike Chioda, as well. So literally this was the same ref, same two competitors. Honestly, I feel like this was one of the better matches that these two have had with each other. Of course, like the WrestleMania 22 bout is iconic just for the simple fact that it was the first time that they were meeting each other, and it was important because Cena was coming in as the underdog while Triple H was the more experienced veteran at the time. But this match, it was different because these two were more experienced, and they crossed each other's paths multiple occasions throughout the year, so it was just finally time to decide who was going to be the champion tonight. And of course, Triple H wins the match. No surprise there because, Triple H was not going to take any losses. Pay-per-view honestly was a really special pay-per-view, I feel like, just because of the simple fact that, like I said at the beginning of the video, it was just seeing all the champions coming out and being able to defend their championships. Every match actually felt like it mattered, and you had just these bigger than life stars on the show that really helped elevate it in some way. So that's really all I had to say for this video. Hey, if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. I really appreciate it. And I'll just catch you guys in the next one. Peace.